Hi, I'm Mike with House on the Mend. Welcome to the first video in my series where we're going to convert this basic run-of-the-mill 2018 Ram Promaster 2500 high roof into a hybrid work and travel van. So let's get started.
House on the Mend.
So how's this going to differ from a lot of the videos you've probably already watched on YouTube? Like me, if you've been searching around, most of the van conversions I see on these cargo vans have been for folks that are going to be living full-time in the van. And that's where we differ here. While I do want to do many of the conversions that they do, this is not going to be my full-time living space. This is going to be my daily driver back and forth to work, running my handyman business. And then on the weekends, when we have travel ball and camping and other family activities, this is going to be a great resource for that as well. Why don't we open the door, we'll head in, and I'll give you a basic overview of what I'm thinking for this van. All right. So as you can see, this is a bare bones skeleton of a cargo van. There isn't any paneling on the doors, nothing on the sides, nothing on the ceiling. It is completely open space. And if you look here, there's riv nuts going all the way around the perimeter here, which tells me that it used to have a gate that separated the cargo area from the passenger area. And in fact, I found a little piece of paper in here when I was cleaning it out that makes me think it was originally an on-track delivery vehicle. And you can see that it's had plenty of work. There's bare metal on the floor here. There's little waves and dents in the wheel wells. And there's little bumps and dings where packaging items have bumped into the wall. So that's no problem because we're going to cover that all up. So for the overview of the van, the first thing I want is a bed right here on these about mid-height rails. Now that gives me enough height to fit all my tools for my daily handyman business needs right underneath the bed. So it's truly going to be a garage for all my tools. On the passenger side of the vehicle is going to be the water tank that's going to run over to the sink and hopefully a shower. The driver's side of the van is going to have all the electrical from the solar panels that are going to go on the roof, the battery, the inverter, all the things that we need so that we can route electricity throughout the vehicle. Now as we step back towards the front passenger area, in this first space as you walk in through the door, since there's 4 of us, we're going to need bench seats or bucket seats to go here for the girls to sit and strap in with seat belts. We can't just have them sitting out on the bed while the car's in motion. That would be unsafe. Now that becomes a consideration, and it's another difference from most of the van builds I see where there's really only the 2 seats up front and everything else is living space. We're going to actually have to come up with a way of mounting either a bench or a couple bucket seats back here that have their own built-in seat belts so that we're not bolting too much stuff into the frame of the vehicle. Now, as you've probably seen from most of the van builds, the first thing we're going to need to address is what they call in the auto industry SVH, sound, vibration, and harshness. So these vans are basically a big old can, and every one of these big panels has quite a bit of echo and resonance going on. Not so much on the ceiling where it's corrugated or on the floor, but definitely these back doors. Everything is going to have sound deadening put into it. So I have some Kilmats that's highly rated on Amazon. I'm going to start installing those all throughout the walls, the low points in the floor, the ceiling, also on the doors. And then we're going to put insulation in because we live in Las Vegas here and it gets very hot or actually very cold. So we're going to put 3M Thinsulate insulation throughout all the big accessible areas. And then up front here, above this headliner, we're also going to put some of that Kilmat. But then I also have another thinner foam insulation that I'm going to do for the whole area, including the doors and, if necessary, maybe even some of the floorboards in the van. So in an effort to take you along with this journey of quieting down this loud van, the first thing I did was set up this little Zoom H1 microphone as well as a camera up front. And I drove it around like it is right now, bare bones, so you could hear how much vibration's going on. So at various speeds and various differences in the roads and going over bumps and through construction work, you can hear how this van just rattles and echoes around back here. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a rag and some isopropyl alcohol, and we're going to clean every surface before we put the Kilmat strip on. Once the strip is applied with the self-adhesive backing, we're going to roll it on. It has kind of a waffled pattern to it, and once it's rolled, that pattern is supposed to change, and that shows you that you've rolled it enough and you've got it well seated onto the metal. For these certain pieces that we might have to trim down inevitably, I've got these really heavy-duty shears that I'm hoping will do the trick. And then I'm going to wear rubber gloves the entire time since I'm going to be working with alcohol. All right, let's go step by step through the first panel and then we'll do all the rest. I'm going to start with this back door here because it's such a nice big area. I won't have to cut any of the mat or do anything. I'm just going to put it right in the center, and that way we'll get the most bang for our buck as far as the vibration being tamped down. Now the directions in some of the other videos I watched said to really look out for these edges because this is almost like tinfoil and it's pretty sharp, so just be careful. All right, let's do a little test. So this is one we haven't done yet, obviously, as opposed to, so a lot less of the resounding wave tones. Cool. All right, only about 100 more to go. With what little bit of daylight we have, I wanted to show you our progress. You saw me started by myself, but then Aspen came out to help. I was able to Tom Sawyer her into helping me whitewash this fence, which is fantastic. So we've got all the walls covered. I'm just about to finish up the bottom of the actual door. I'm not going to put any here because we're putting windows on this side and this side, which I forgot and wasted 2 whole pieces on. But and then you can see we've got all the way down the walls. Now these 2 spots here are completely filled in. That's not normally necessary. All you really need is this to stop the resounding effect like a cymbal. But the bed is going to be right here, and these are going to be the feet, and behind me is going to be the head. So on both sides I filled it in completely because I'm not going to put Thinsulate insulation there and sacrifice that head and foot space. Instead, I'm going to put a Noico insulation that's like 150 mil. It's very thin, and that's going to go on top of this Kilmat, and then we'll put carpet or something cool on the sides that'll look nice. I'm going to finish up the bottom of the door and both wheel wells, and that'll be it for today. We still have the floor and the ceiling to do. All right, so we got the Kilmat installed on the walls, on the doors, on the wheel wells, and on the ceiling. And I also want to do it on the floor, but as you can see, this floor has been worn down on the high spots to bare metal. And I want to put some primer down before we start working on the Kilmat in the low spots, and then adding some subflooring so that we don't have any chance of bare metal turning to rust. So I'm going to use this Bullseye primer. Now I know you might be thinking, hey, why don't you use Rust-Oleum? Well, Bullseye is actually made by Rust-Oleum, and it's meant for metal, and it has a rust inhibited just like Rust-Oleum. I actually would have gotten the regular Rust-Oleum, but it was locked up at the Home Depot, and this wasn't. So we're going to use this. Before we do that, I cleaned the entire floor, so it was pretty dirty. I put a no residue cleaner into hot water, and I took a scrub brush, cleaned the whole floor off. Then I removed all the tie-down points, which are really nice and handy in here. I've taken this around on a couple jobs, and those just come out with a T40 bit. And then I covered each of those holes with a little bit of painter's tape just so the paint doesn't get down into the thread. I've got some booties that I'm going to put on my shoes so I don't accidentally get paint all over my shoes. First thing I want to do is mix this. I've got a little drill attachment, and then we're going to get started. All right, I think I'll give this a little time to dry, and then I'll hit the high spots again until I don't see the really dark bare metal shining through. Well, floor's painted, so now it's back to cutting, sticking, and rolling Kilmat. I noticed that there are these little circles going all the way along in little rows. And if you look underneath the van, those are actual like framing joists that are going across. And if you tap on either side of those, you still get quite a bit of ringing. Like that echoes a lot. But right in between them, it's pretty deadened. And then on the other side, right back. So I think what I'm going to do is cut it in strips in such a way that I'm only going to treat on either side of those joists. So we may get a little further with what we have left. I saved 4 pieces. I want to put 2 up above the headliner and 1 on either door to also deaden all that sound in the cab area. So here we go. All right, so we're over on the passenger door, and I've removed the panel and also the little bin here. Now, before you freak out and say, hey, I would have liked to have seen that, please watch this video that I'll link up above. It's by the Fit RV, and it's literally called How to Remove the Door Panels from a Ram Promaster. It is so good, I would be wasting YouTube's time recreating it. So watch that video on how this panel comes off. Once you get it off, you'll find out if your van's like mine that there's a little bit of dirt all around here, so that's to be expected. I'm just gonna take a wet rag and I'm gonna wipe all that off first, because this is a perfect opportunity to get in, especially up here by the window where food and stuff might have dropped in there, and just get all that cleaned off. You're not gonna have another opportunity unless you take this whole panel off again, and I'd rather not. All right, now, there is a kind of a thin foam pad here that is like sound deadening. Well, we're gonna add to that, but first I wanna go inside on the actual door and put sound deadening Kilmat on the door itself. So to get access to this area, we need to peel this back. But luckily it's just stuck on there with this really, really sticky black goo. And you can just kind of peel it off and it'll go right back on when you're done. It's pretty cool. So let's peel this down and we'll get the top view. And then when we're done with this side, I'm gonna peel this side up and then get down towards the bottom half. So from here, we've got this access area here, and then we'll be able to get in through the speaker hole. One thing I recommend when it comes time to start putting the Kilmat in is to put some gloves on, because these edges are a little bit sharp. And if you're trying to roll and you slip, you could take off the skin right off your knuckles. So I can see that there is quite a bit of the same kind of road grime in there. And that's not too surprising since the window rolls down right here. So I'm gonna get in there first with just a wet rag, and I'm gonna wipe down this whole area in there that I can actually reach. All right, so right here and right here are the tracks for the window. The window rolls right down on those. So there is a good 3/4 of an inch to an inch of clearance that we have to work with on most of the door, except right here where there's a little line indent on the door for trim's sake. It gets pretty close. So the reason I'm pointing that out is to say I recommend you don't try to put the Thinsulate insulation in there, because that is so thick that it would start impeding on the window rolling down. So instead, we're gonna first put some pieces of Kilmat in there everywhere we can. And then I have this Noico foam insulation and sound deadening. So we're gonna also slip that into as many places as we can back here. I already did it on the other door and drove around, and it's such a quiet door now. It's really impressive. So let's get to work on doing that. Now you can't really fit a whole sheet in here. It doesn't really quite fit in any way, but I think I can get about a half sheet right in here. You can see my fingers. And we can get probably 1/3 of a sheet or so over here. So I'm gonna cut that real quick. I wouldn't take off the whole back and put it in there, because you might just get it stuck. Instead, what we're gonna do is start from one corner. I'm gonna peel back and hold on. And then I'm gonna guide this in here and not let it touch yet. You'll see why in a minute. I don't want it to stick against the door right here. It wouldn't do us much good. There we go. Okay. So now that we're in place, I can peel back the rest of it. And then I'm just first rubbing it down by hand. All right. Now I'm not so worried about cutting myself. That's better. Okay, so we'll repeat that over here, and then we're gonna come in with the Noico sound deadener / foam insulation. So with this one, I wanna see how far I can get. Now this product by Noico, you don't have to roll, you just, they say to rub your hands across it, make sure it's all pressed down real good and that there's no air bubbles. All right, I can fit another small little piece right down in here. Now when we look on the full sheet paper, we can see the whole paper came up, so none of it tore, so we know we've got a good seal there. And same thing with that little piece that I cut down there, so good to go there. All right, and repeat the same thing over here, and then when we come back, I will work on this bottom area. All right, so we got the top done. Put it right back into place here. This stuff's very sticky, so you don't have to replace it. It just goes right back into place. Then I peeled up this area, and I just kind of wrapped it and stuck it against here temporarily, so we've got this workspace. Yeah, if you have a look in there, that's nice and smooth all the way across. Okay, let's listen to that. Oh yeah, that's just a dull thud now. Okay, so we just take this little bit of goo right off of there, carefully slide this guy right back into place. So next thing I'm going to do is take the Noico, and I'm going to cover, without covering up these holes that the pieces go back into, I'm going to cover as much of this foam padding with some more of this Noico as possible all the way around this, and then on the other side of the plastic panel pieces as well. And that's right off of their little website, their video on how to do it. All right. I'm going to put a couple pieces on the back of the trim panels that are going to go on here, and then we'll put it all back together. All right, so put another piece right on the back here. I made sure not to be close to these little yellow tabs, because we're going to need those to click right back into place. Nice, right? Now the next piece that goes on is the top piece. So there's already a big piece of styrofoam on the back of the door panel, so all I did was add a little bit right here where your drink and stuff goes, so that's a nice area to kind of keep quiet. Well, I did record the whole thing, but the battery ran out. Anyway, listen to this. It's just a dead thud all the way through. It's awesome. All right, so we have put Kilmat sound deadener all the way around the back of the van. We've done both doors. So I think it's time that we do a kind of a mid sound deadening test drive to see where we're at. All right, second trip, same settings on the microphone, everything. Same route as well. Let's see if there's a difference. Not sure how well the microphone picks it up, but it does have more of a lower bass tone to it than before. All the treble and mids are kind of gone out of the noise I heard in the back. So what'd you think of the difference with all the sound deadening on there? Could you hear it? I sure could from the driver's seat, so I hope it translates through on the microphone. All right, next step is to start on the insulation that's going to be part of the subfloor. From right here where we're going to start, we're going to put in a layer of rigid foam insulation, and then on top of that, 1/2-inch plywood. Now, so that we're not always walking right on the foam insulation and crushing it, we're going to also put in rows of 1-inch by 1-inch square aluminum tubing. And those are going to act as floor joists going across the raised bumps, so that we are transferring that weight from the plywood down onto the aluminum and sparing the foam insulation all of that weight. Here's what I got. This is available right at your local Home Depot or Lowe's. This is 1-inch thick polystyrene. Now, polyiso, if you can find it, is apparently easier to cut because this is basically styrofoam, and you've got all the little styrofoam balls that are pressed together, and they're gonna just flake and ball everywhere when I try to cut this, but it's what I had available at my local store, so it's what I got. Comes in a 4x8 sheet, and this particular brand has a kind of clear plastic on this side, and then this side is like an aluminum foil backing. So that might keep it together from crumbling all over when I try to cut it. We'll find out. So I have measured out the center line is right on top of this ridge here, and the widest point on the floor is 74 inches. So we're going to start by cutting this foam board down to 74 inches, and then I'm going to go from the center line out each way as we go and mark around as I take measurements the wheel wells. And this back piece here is going to be the most difficult because the rest of this van is pretty much a straight run. So I marked out 74 inches on the tinfoil side of this, which makes it easier to see my marks. And I'm just going to take this T-square, line it up with those marks to make sure we're nice and square. I got a nice, fresh, sharp blade in this box cutter. Alright. So if you keep that seam close like this, you can just run your razor right on down, and it cuts off that spare piece, no problem, right? So we're basically going to be coming in like this, and we're going to need to cut around the wheel well. So I'm going to start taking measurements from my line and start plotting out, and then I'll cut around those. All right, working off the center line. I came out and traced all the measurements. So we're coming a little pocket before the wheel well, then the wheel well, and we come all the way up around that corner, and we end right here at 46 inches. And that's going to give me room for a 1-inch piece of aluminum on either side. Way better than the utility knife or the bread knife is my jigsaw. This happens to be a rigid jigsaw I've had forever. It's great. But look at this cut, all in one piece. Just perfect. So, time to bring it over to the van and see how we did. All right, here we go. Nice. We're real tight right along both wheel wells, and listen to this. That might be asking for trouble even when I do finally glue it down, so I might go back and widen these up just a little, but all right, first one down. That wasn't bad at all. The rest of them are pretty straight. I cut out the rest of the polystyrene for the entire floor. I then cut 1-inch square aluminum cross supports every 2 feet, so each 4-foot section of the subfloor above would eventually touch 3 cross supports. For the garage area in the rear third of the van, I decided to go with a heavy rubber stall mat due to it being easy to clean and a quiet cushioned surface for my tools. I used 1/2-inch plywood for the front living area so I can eventually cover it with a nice looking flooring. Once everything was properly fitted, I used marine adhesive to securely glue down the insulation, aluminum cross bracing, and subflooring. I stacked toolboxes and cinder blocks on the plywood to keep it flat on the cross braces while the adhesive dried. The stall mat is very heavy and did not need any help staying flat. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 1, and if you did, will you please give it a thumbs up? It really helps the algorithms to start sharing it with more viewers like you interested in van builds. I'd also love to hear your feedback from what kind of things you want to see, how much or how little detail you'd like to see. I shoot a lot of video for each of these, and I try to pare it down into a very consumable amount for you, the viewer. Also, please consider subscribing. I'm working really hard to put out good quality content. This is a first in a long series of episodes for this van build. I'm also going to be continuing my tool reviews, and there's a lot of those to come as well. So it's free, you don't have to do anything. You just log in and click subscribe or follow if you're on Rumble. Now, at the end of each video, I'm going to endeavor to give you a cost breakdown as well as how much weight we added to the van. So the Kilmat was $126, 35 pounds of weight added. The Noico self-adhesive sound deadening was $104, adding 4 pounds. The Bullseye primer, $12, adding only about a pound of paint. The stall mat was $50, and that added 100 pounds. Those stall mats are very heavy. 1-inch square aluminum, I ended up using 9 pieces for this particular part of the project. That was $200 and 13 pounds. 2 sheets of 1/2-inch plywood cost me $86 and added 66 pounds. And the 1-inch polystyrene rigid foam insulation was $40 and added 5 pounds. So the total was $618 and adding 224 pounds. So until next time, thank you for watching. $118, 224 pounds. Thank you, Mr. Airline. Let's try that again.